Thank you, Teresa. So I think one thing that Teresa just mentioned was the question of how do these things connect back to my organization? Part of the Life Meets Work experience is that it is an experience, that it is focused on feeling and experiencing something in order to advance understanding. But when you go back to your organizations, you can't necessarily share that experience directly with the people that you're talking to. And so one of the things that we wanted to arm you with was some more researchy, heady things that you can present to somebody who's not feeling this with you. So we ended up doing a study that speaks to a lot of the work that we do. So as has been mentioned, Life Meets Work is really committed to people having a better life on and off the job. As the people who organize that experience on the job, they assess, they direct, they plan, they strategize. Leaders are a key focal hub for how people experience their work. And it's the main reason why we want to focus on leadership and well-being in leadership and how that ripples outwards throughout your organization and affects your bottom line. So to make a point, let's look at this guy right here. How do you think he's feeling? Yeah, and we know that people who are stressed, who are overwhelmed, they have a harder time being creative. They have a harder time problem solving. They have a harder time being empathetic. These are all qualities of a leader. How do you think he's going to respond to those people that are making all those requests to him? Do you think he's going to listen, be supportive, engage, solve their problems, or pop and have that then ripple out through the team? They all go back to their desks, they mumble, they grumble, and that one person's bad moment becomes everybody's bad experience. And that's one of the reasons why we want to focus on the idea of how does a leader's well-being affect the rest of your organization. So in order to do that, we started with doing a research study. That study consists of a questionnaire that we put together asking 1,000 US employees, 18 to 70, all different generations, men and women, about their leaders, about some of these positive leadership traits. So we have 38 different things that leaders can do to make things succeed. We also asked about a number of negative traits that we refer to as toxic leadership, things that leaders do that makes everybody not succeed. And you'll be seeing a report about that very soon. But we also asked a bunch of other things about employees. Whether or not they thought their leader was helpful or harmful. Did they think that their manager discriminated against them and the opportunities that they got? Was their manager a role model? What was their manager's demographics? What were theirs? How functional was the team? All sorts of different things, stress, health, employee demographics, to really understand what the experience of leadership and leader well-being was on our employees. And so what we found was a significant leadership gap from the perspective of the people who were being led. We find that too many leaders can't lead themselves. About 1 in 3 leaders said that 1 in 3 employees said that their leader was unable to present as enthusiastic and optimistic, confident to manage stress well, and tolerate frustration. We also found that about 45% of respondents said that their leader was not effective at leading other people. This means they couldn't coach, they couldn't network well, they couldn't build a team. They also had about 38% saying their leaders were micromanaging them. So we see a scenario of people frustrated and upset with the nature of the person who's directing them through their day. We also saw that toxic leadership was really distressingly common. About 56% of people said that their leader was toxic in some way. That means their leader did things like have explosive outbursts, steal credit for other people's work, and otherwise engage in behaviors that made people want to leave the organization. So this is not just, I'm not good at what I do. This is, I am actively pushing you out the door. We also found that a lot of employees were saying that they worked in adversarial and emotionally isolating work environments. I think this part ties very directly to what we were working on in our sessions today, about being able to reconnect. But employees think that, where they work, you're either in or you're out, and once you're out, you're out. Expressing any emotion other than anger or pride is seen as weak. And if you don't stand up for yourself, people here will step on you. How stressed do you think people are going to be in environments where they think that's the case? We also asked them, if you had the choice to do a leadership job without making more money, would you take it? And we found that 1 in 3, about 37%, said no. And this is of the people within our sample that actually were leaders already. So we have about a third of leaders saying, I don't really want to be doing this job if you weren't paying me more. And then we sort of asked them another little piece. So what is it you don't like about leading? I'm like, I don't actually like the people. I don't want to deal with their problems, and I don't want to have my success be tied to their success. How can your organization function if a third of your leaders are like, I don't actually want to deal with the people you put me in charge of? So we know that there's a problem. There's definitely a gap going on with what people are experiencing in their workplaces and their connection to their leaders. So what do they actually want? Enough diagnosing the problem. Can we come up with some solutions, some sense of where we want to go next? So we asked them as well, how likely are you to recommend your leader to a friend or colleague who's looking for a job similar to your own? And compare that to that list of 38 positive traits. What are the things that make someone say, this is a leader that I would tell someone I care about to go work for? And what we found was 5 big things popped. First was the ability to motivate others. Second was to coach, to help people find and develop their own skills. Managing stress was number 3. Being accountable for your mistakes. So having a leader who says, yeah, I made a mistake. This is what we're going to do now. Let's just fix it. And finally, a willingness to change course. So not just getting anchored in, this is the way we've always done it. We're going to keep doing it. So at this point, I'm going to do a little audience participation. So motivating others is top the list. It was important to all of the generations, Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, and boomers. But the other 4 were top the list for one of each of the generations. So let's start with boomers. How many people, by a show of hands, think that coaching was number 1 for boomers? Okay. Managing stress. 1, 2, 3. All right, 4. Being accountable. All right. Willingness to change course. All right, we have a bunch of really good, intuitive people here. Boomers wanted their leaders to be accountable. It makes sense. They've been in the workforce the longest. They kind of know what's going on, whether or not it's working, whether it's not working. They're not vulnerable to the snow job of, yeah, I did it right. So what about Gen X? How many people think coaching is number 1 for Gen X? 1, 2. Managing stress. Okay. And willingness to change course. All right. Coaching. Think about Gen X and where they sit in the midst of all the generations. We talk about boomers. We talk about millennials. We're now starting to talk about Gen Z. Who talks about Gen X? They're the generation that's somewhat forgotten, yet they're in the position to be moving up into leadership right now. Yet no one's talking about them and developing their skills and getting them ready for that position. They want to be coached. What about millennials? Who thinks managing stress is number 1 for millennials? Okay. And willingness to change course. We're getting down to the wire. So yes, millennials want their leaders to be willing to change course. They're the generation that thought they were going to transform the workplace. So we weren't surprised, and we saw that millennials wanted leaders who were able to say, yes, this is the way we've done it. There may be reasons to change. And so that leaves us with Gen Z. Gen Z who's really concerned with leaders who can manage stress. So this is important. They're the next wave of people that are coming into your companies. And there's a lot of different reasons why Gen Z would be concerned with managing stress. And that's going to be a large part of my presentation a little bit later today. But this isn't the only reason why having leaders who manage stress well is important to your organizations. We find that highly effective stress managers also have highly effective teams and more highly engaged employees. There's a handout amongst your materials that lists a variety of outcomes that we saw were bumped up when leaders were good at managing stress. And so that included things like health, engagement, the effectiveness of teams, all of these pieces that organizations benefit from and are seeking to try and improve, but somehow can't quite grab their hands on. Engagement is always at 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, highly, moderate, and low. Well, this may be one of the ways in which we're supposed to be reaching out, not just directly to the employee, but to the person who shapes that employee's experience. The other piece that came out to be really important is that stress reduces the value of your human resources. I like to think of it as leaders are hot air balloons. And they're carrying their teams up into the sky. As how high that team can go is dependent on the quality of that leader. Stress starts punching holes in that balloon, and they start leaking talent. Leaders that are too stressed to stop and think and contemplate are not going to be able to help their team make solutions. They're not going to fight against those toxic cultures that evolve. They're not going to have the energy to say, let's let this meeting run a little bit longer so we can solve this problem. I just want to move on to the next thing. And in our study, we found that the quality of a leader's positive behaviors and the effects on the other things goes up when the leaders are able to manage stress. So more specifically, coaching. The effective coaching on employee engagement goes up when that leader is able to manage stress. So you get a bigger bang for whatever training you offer your leaders when those leaders can manage their stress well. We also asked employees, how should we be teaching leadership? Is this something you want on the job? You want to stumble your way through? Do you want us to talk to you about it? What should be happening? Well, employees want to learn to lead before they're leading. 94% of our sample said organizations have a responsibility to teach people to be leaders. And 2/3 said that they wanted to learn that before they actually were in the position of leading. Throwing someone into the leadership position and saying, all right, now we'll train you, isn't what anyone wants. They want to be able to feel like they're walking into this with those skills already in place. We also asked, where do people find inspiration and information on good leadership? And we gave them a long list. It included personal sources, trainings, books, and videos, all sorts of different things that you could be getting. And the things that topped the list were people. They want to learn from their parents and family was number one. From peers, senior leaders, executive leaders, and their own experiences. One of the things that many organizational trainings lose is that human element, that piece of connecting to another human being and learning from their experiences. Yet this is what people are saying they want most out of all the different ways of learning how to be a great leader. And so I think that one of the important things when we think about how we offer training and how we develop people is to not have it be this one on themselves through a machine, through the computer, but really connecting them through peer networks and other opportunities to be able to share experiences, get feedback, and rethink what they're doing in different ways. So overall, what we find in this study is that too many employees see their leaders as emotionally disconnected from themselves and their teams. The incoming wave of new employees see stress management as a key leadership skill. It's going to be important as you think about recruitment, especially college-level recruitment. Being able to position yourself as the organization where you're not going to just have a job, but you're going to have a meaningful life and experience here, and you're not going to burn out, is going to be really important to beating out your colleagues. Leaders who manage stress well are just better leaders. No matter how good you are, if you're too stressed to think clearly, nobody's going to be able to benefit from your full talents. And finally, employees want to learn leadership early, and they want to learn it from people. We really need to stop and rethink how we're connecting people with ideas of how they should be and who they should be, especially in a job that is itself about working with people. Yet we don't think about training them through people.